Saludos and salutations, Broncos Country, and welcome to another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. Today, we are going to talk about the running back to basics. I know you guys can see the title. Shout out to Johnny Baki for coming up with such a very, very clever title. Basically, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to give we're going to take your opinions and give ours as well about what we think needs to be done to improve the running game. Of course, as you guys know, this past season was no surprise that the running game was completely lacking. And as great as Bo Nix and the offensive can be, we need to keep in mind that a running game is essential if this team is to prosper. Also, we are going to go into Broncos overtime talking about the AFC and NFC championship games. So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you stay tuned, get that popcorn ready, get your drinks or whatever you have handy, because here we go. And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Don Diaz, and joining me to my left or right, depending on where you're watching us, is my co-host at Bronco Libre. Libre, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been one hell of a weekend. We had the AFC and NFC showdowns come down to one game wasn't even close. The other one came down to the wire. We are going to get into all that, plus the topic of today's show, which we said at the beginning of the program was running back to basics. But before we get any and all that stuff done out of the way, in case this is your very first time, we got to get some stuff out of the way before we get started. So first of all, we would like to ask you to please show your support for us here at the Orange and Blue Network. We ask you to please subscribe, share, comment, and like on any and all the programs you see on here that are to your liking. We also ask you to support us on MHRT Network. This is a simulcast, so we're broadcasting on both channels at the exact same time. How awesome is that? Subscribe, share, comment, and like on any and all their videos. And please make sure you tell them that your boys Libre and the Don Diaz sent you. They appreciate your support. Also, we'd like to give out a shout out to our host for today's show, which is Dubby. For those of you that don't know, Dubby is a patented formula. It's an energy formula that gives you that energy and that push that you, if you so hardly need, that you normally get from coffee and energy drinks. Because all that stuff, when you throw everything that makes your coffee and energy drinks, there's a lot of bad stuff in there. Okay, let's be real. And that's where Dubby comes in, because Dubby was formulated to give you the focus and the energy with no jitters or crash. Their formula contains vitamins, amino acids, and nootropics, including the patented Neurofactor formula. It contains no calories, it's got no sugar, it's got no maltodextrin, no fillers, and no artificial colors. Ladies and gentlemen, basically, it's all the good stuff without all the bad. And to show you that how our good friends over at Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast, the flagship show here on the it broadcasts on MHRT, but it's on the Orange and Blue Network, want to give you guys 10% off. When you go at your checkout, please make sure you use the code NRWOB10 to get 10% off on any of all your favorite W flavors. Shout out to our good friends over at Nothing Rhymes With for the 10% off. Again, that's code NRWOB10 to get your 10% off on all your W purchases. And shout out to W for being a sponsor of not just here on Broncos Talk, but for all of our shows throughout the network. Also, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to us on the audio version and you can't join us here for the live show, that's perfectly okay. We ask you that you can do your part as well. Please hit that live notification button so you get live notifications. Subscribe so you get live notifications every time an episode goes up uploaded wherever it is you guys get your podcast. Reviews are always welcome. Please screenshot and send it to us. Our Twitters are right there at the bottom. Mine is at Adam610 Mexican. Bronco Libres is at Bronco Libre 5280. For any business inquiries, you can email at BroncoTalk2020@gmail.com. If you are joining us here live, we are going to try to get to every and all your comments. If we don't get to them, we do apologize, but we will do our very best as the show goes along.
Whew, I'm winded.
I think I did better than last week. I'm getting better. I'm working on my craft.
There you go. I like it.
And first of all, D-Rock comes in and says, Libre and the Don, what's up, my dudes?
What's up?
D-Rock, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to see you in the chat and to be a supporter of us here on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, as we are getting closer to the end of the NFL season, I know it's hard, but that's unfortunately true. We are just down to one game left. And then we have to go, what is it, Libre, like 5-6 excruciating months without football until the Hall of Fame game is kind of like a nice breath of fresh air, even though it's got no starters. But it's just nice to hear those pads clash and see a football being thrown around that isn't at practice,
Yeah, no, that's in August. Early August is when that game is happening. But again, even with that's what, 6-7 months away.
Mm-hmm.
That we have to wait for full action again.
Well, basically, the reason I wanted to talk about this today, Libre, is even though we're going to talk about this later on at the end of the show, I want to bring up Saquon Barkley. Because Saquon Barkley, going into another team, the turnaround for that team offensively has been amazing. And that just goes to show you how a running game can just take the top off of an offense that might be struggling. If your quarterback can't find the right, to get in the right rhythm, or your wide receivers or whatnot. But having a guy like a Saquon Barkley, like a Derrick Henry, I can't think of any other good running backs off the top of my head. Kyron Williams. Trying to think of one off of my fantasy squad.
No, I had Derrick Henry on mine, but then you have Austin Eckler.
Mm-hmm.
He's another good example. There's a lot of good backs that are out there in the league where they make their team itself, where it makes for the passing game and the run game itself. And that's something I know that the Broncos have missed out, especially over the last several years, where we thought we had one guy, but it was truly not the right guy for us. But yeah, I'm talking about some of these guys that could take the relief off of the quarterback. So the quarterback is not being the main person or putting a team in being one-dimensional, where that's like a defensive coordinator's dream. If you can have a defense or the offense itself to be one-dimensional, all you need to do is just try to stop that now. And, and that's sometimes what happened with us a couple of times this year is that we couldn't run the ball and we had to throw, and everyone knew it.
Definitely, my friend. So basically, what I wanted to get into, I'm sorry, I wasn't ignoring you. I was pulling something up that I forgot to pull up before the show. Is just basically, let's talk about where the answer might lie for our Denver Broncos, ladies and gentlemen. Does the answer lie in free agency? Do the Broncos have to shell out? They have a little bit more money to play around with this year, not as much as they will after this year when they finally get Russell Wilson's contract off of their books, as well as a couple others. Or do they take their chances in the draft and try to draft up for I keep forgetting this man's name. Genty, thank you. Do they try to go get Genty, who's being highlighted as like the next big thing in terms of running backs, which is really weird because not too many teams in their history draft a running back in the very first round. It's only happened a couple times. I think we talked about this before, Libra. I think the last one you mentioned was Ezekiel Elliott going to Dallas. But that just proved how great Dallas's offensive line was, because as soon as that started to decay and just break down, Zeke just wasn't the same player after that, So basically, if you guys have your ideas, you can shoot them to us here in the chat. If you're listening to us after the fact and there's somebody that we missed, please make sure you hit us up on social media. We're always down and happy to talk about anything and all things football. So without further ado, I'm going to share this screen with you, and we're going to go over the list, over the top free agents. I hope you guys can see that. I don't know if you can see that, Libre. But,
yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So let's talk about the first one. The first one is Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is going to be a free agent this year. And I'll just read off what it says. It says Jones took a 1-year deal with the Vikings this offseason and looks set to be one of the top running backs available again in 2025. His 75.8 PFF rushing grade in the regular season ranked 22 among running backs, and he brings constant production at the as the owner of 8 straight 75 plus PFF overall grades. Libre, what are your thoughts? Would you like to see Aaron Jones in the orange and blue?
If we can get him for the prices right, like he has put up some good numbers, but I also feel like he needs to fit into our system. I'd have to look at it more to see if he's going to be able to fit into Sean Payton's offense itself. But if we can get him just because of name alone, yes, I would like to bring him in, but I don't feel like we need to overpay for him as well. Like bring him in, look, just wow him here in Denver. If we're going to try to really go after him, wow, look at the new facility that's being built here. This is what a player wants to come to, a player-friendly atmosphere, a team that's actually winning now. We're on the upside of where we're at with the way that this team is going, and I feel like that alone is going to attract players to come along and hopefully take less money and not be like the greediness and trying to get all that money in the free agency what they want to do. If they want to come in and win now, I think they'll make that decision. If Aaron Jones is ready for that, I think he should be a good fit with us.
I don't have anything personally against Aaron Jones. I think he's a really good player, but there's just something about him that doesn't grab my attention or, excite me at the idea of bringing him in and saying this guy is the guy that the Broncos should go and pay a lot of money for. Because yes, he was pretty productive in Minnesota, and he was definitely productive when he was at Green Bay.
Yeah.
But I don't think that if the asking price goes down from what he's asking, I think I'd entertain the thought. But you guys have to remember that in free agency, every player that comes in, they're going to be asking for a whole bunch of money. Some players are literally going to rob certain teams of their cap space, knowing damn well they're not worth it. But that's just how it is. That's how the NFL works out nowadays. The teams have to take the risk, and they have to overpay for these players and hope that investment pays out in the end. Because if it doesn't, then we're going to be stuck with all these players that they move on from the team, but they're still being paid. And their numbers are still in that team's books, and they could really, really do some damage. In the pocketbook. So again, I don't have anything against Aaron Jones. I wouldn't mind seeing him in the orange and blue, but if it's got to be at a much friendlier price than this, I'm pretty sure he's going to go looking to break the bank. And I just don't think that Denver is the right place if he's trying to earn money. If he's trying to come and help us win a championship, then hey, I'm all for it. Moving on to the second one here, it says Najee Harris from the Steelers. Harris is a model of consistency, and there's value in that even if he is not the most explosive or shifty player in the open field. His 1,097 rushing attempts since he entered the league in 2021 ranked second to only Derrick Henry over that span. His 4,316 rushing yards ranked fifth, and his 3,203 yards after first contact placed fourth. The best thing going for Harris may not even be his own production, but the fact that nearly every starting running back signed last season, your Barkley, your Josh Jacobs, and your Henry, to name a few, had outstanding references. I'm just going to go off on a limb and say I don't want Najee Harris because Najee Harris reminds me a whole lot of Javonte Williams. And I would much rather you pay Javonte Williams because you at least know what you have. If you were going to go that route, it's just a hypothetical, not saying that I want it. But there's nothing. Harris got outshined by the man behind him. I can't think of his name.
I can't remember. I know.
You know who I'm talking about. So he's nothing I mean, to even put him in the names of like, Saquon and Josh Jacobs and Henry Saquon, who's in the freaking Super Bowl, is really, really shooting for the stars in terms of, like, hey, notice me type of thing. I don't think Najee's going to get a big contract if that's where he's trying to go to in free agency. He'll probably settle for a team that's like, hey, we just need a guy, and he might not be the starter, which I wouldn't be surprised. But I really doubt he finds a team that'll break the bank for him to bring his services. What do you think, Libre?
No, I agree with you 100% with with that analysis itself. My thing is, if you just look right there, top free agent comparison, Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon of 2020, like even with that, like that's probably one of his better years. But when he was here in Denver, he did not do nothing, and I can just see fumbles. And all I see is that with Najee Harris, like, and how I just said in here, he's not that shifty, he's not that way. He's not going to be a good part for our team because that's basically what we have now. We don't have anybody that's really good shifty or like power runner. He's not that type of a power runner itself. I feel like we need to just make that one cut and then go. I don't think he's that type of guy either. So yeah, I don't see him here in Denver in the orange and blue. He could stay there with Russell Wilson. I think the Steelers will end up re-signing Russ. But it's going to be, yeah, just like how you're saying, there's nothing that anybody's going to be giving him top dollar for. He's going to go in there and just be a filler for any team that if he doesn't go back to with the Steelers itself.
Agree. Before we continue, want to answer our good friend over here, a Broncos fan for life. My high salute to you, my friend. And he says, Denver's going to need it to draft a tight end, a running back, a wide receiver, and a D-line. Well, yeah, they do. I have no disagreement with you there. But if Vance Joseph stays, I have faith in him that he's going to fix what is, I don't want to say broken, but it's not working. Let's put it that way. In terms of linebackers and defensive linemen. Defensive linemen, I think we're okay because if the D-line was a problem, they wouldn't have let in sacks. So if he wants to get like a rotation, I'm good with that. And wide receiver, that's also you can throw that in there with tight end and running backs, which is what we're talking about now. But I have a feeling that tight ends the Broncos can get if they sniff out the player. There's got to be a player too that they wanted to get during the trade deadline that they knew they couldn't get. And I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move for like a Mark Ingram or David Njoku, or try to anyway, swing and see what they get. And then he also comes out to say Nick Bolton would be interesting. It will depend if Kansas City will bring him back. Well, that's actually true. But you also have to remember that every team that wins the Super Bowl, every player on that team becomes more expensive to get because they're going to want more money. It comes with the territory, and that's just what it is. So whether if they don't win, then yeah, I can see that happening. But it's I hate talking about the Chiefs winning. Makes my skin crawl.
The thing is, they're not going to win. Let's manifest that right now. Manifest that right now. Yeah. We're 10 days away, 11 days away from the Super Bowl. We're manifesting it, and that's not going to happen.
Thank you, my friend. Okay. So now we got J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins is set to return to form in 2024. Was as remarkable as an NFL storyline as any across the league, with an avalanche of lower body injuries plaguing him over the past few years. The former Baltimore Raven reunited with offensive coordinator Greg Roman, who assumed the same role in a reunion of his own with Jim Harbaugh. Dobbins has always been productive and difficult to bring down with healthy. It's just the staying healthy part that is the real challenge. Again, this is something that you can right up there with Najee Harris. Like, it's a double-edged sword. Like, damn if you do, damn if you don't. So I'm okay with passing on Dobbins. I know he came to LA because obviously his connection he had with Jim Harbaugh. And if he would have stayed healthy, it would have been great. But I don't think there's a team that, knowing he has health issues, is going to want to pay him a lot of money to come and run their offense, because the second he gets hurt, that's literally money being burned. And I really don't see any other team taking a huge chance. Again, I put him in the maybe pile where, after free agency, like any last minute signings, or hell, might end up on a practice squad or, a team friendly deal, something crazy like that. But I don't see Dobbins breaking the bank in terms of getting a big contract. And I really don't see him in the orange and blue. Libre?
Yeah, neither do I. And just like how it's stated over this last several years, he's nothing but injuries. It's all going to be like when it comes to these injuries as well, it's all mental as well for these guys. And I don't feel like he's going to be there for a full season. And that's why you're paying for these guys to come in. You're expecting them to be there for the year. Yeah, we understand certain injuries happen, but we want you to be there for the full season. He actually did a disservice for the Chargers this year because he wasn't there. Once he's in there, he's great. He's phenomenal. But once you're not there, you're not helping the team at all.
Mm-hmm. And the next one is Nick Chubb. The fact that Chubb suited up for all of 2024 after an ugly knee injury sustained in 2023 against the Pittsburgh Steelers speaks to his remarkable resilience, making a similar recovery from a nasty college knee injury to have one of the most efficient starts to a career for any running back to ever play the game. Chubb was not his usually elusive and bruising self in 2024, ceding some work to Jerome Ford after being given a nearly fairly large role upon his return, but it's entirely possible he just needs another full offseason to get his body right for an NFL game workload. So I actually believe that. I wouldn't, if the Broncos can get like a sneaky deal with him where it's not breaking the bank, because Nick Chubb is going through exactly what we went through with Javonte Williams when he came back from his injury. It's the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. The only difference is that Javonte Williams actually had more time to recover, but he didn't get better. He stayed, I don't know if the same is the right word. You could almost argue he kind of went.
He digressed.
Yeah, he digressed. Thank you. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation right now, and why he's not up for a big a new contract with the Broncos. Even though he stated a million times he wants to stay and play in Denver, which is great, but unfortunately, the running game, he didn't do anything to better it, and the guys behind him played a whole lot better than they did, and they tried a whole lot harder,
Oh yeah.
So if you can get Chubb in, and it'd be a huge risk if Denver did that, because just like that article stated, we don't know if we're going to get the Nick Chubb before he got injured, or if we're going to get a Nick Chubb that still hasn't mentally broke out of that shell where it's like, okay, I can go back and do what I did before and run like crazy, So if the Broncos can do it, I'd be all up for it. I wouldn't mind seeing Nick Chubb. Whenever I play Madden, Nick Chubb is usually always my running back anyway. So, and we've already had Bradley Chubb as a Bronco, so why not go get his cousin to come and play for us?
You know what? Like, I feel a change of scenery for Nick Chubb. Doesn't matter, I guess, what team he goes to. I think it's going to be a good thing for him, because he's trying to, if he stays there in Cleveland, like, he's going to try to do too much, and people have too much expectation there for him because they knew what they had in him there. But if he goes into a new situation, a new offense, I think he will only excel. And if we can bring him in, if he can be that type of bruiser that he is, and that he was, like, I feel like that would be a good change. And I feel like this could help our offense itself the way that it is. And with the current line that we have, I think it would only enhance them as well, because they're going to say, hey, let's actually start run blocking. Because I feel like with me being an offensive lineman, that's the best thing I can do, or any compliment that you can get is, we're running the damn ball, try to stop us, it's coming, come and get it. And that's what I love, because having been on that line and you're hitting on every single play, and like, they know that what's happening, and if they can't stop it, that's the best feeling in the world.
Agree, my friend. D-Rock comes in with a comment, says, Mark from Marquee Sports suggested Rico Dowdle from Dallas, which is suitable for our price range. Now, I did hear about this. Somebody on X or Twitter, whatever, shared it on there. And the only concern I have with Dowdle is that he reminds me too much of McLaughlin. Like, they're almost the exact same type of running back. They're both good. They're both speedy, which is great. But we already have that in McLaughlin. If you were to go get Rico Dowdle, then you might as well move on from McLaughlin, because I don't think he'd want to play third fiddle. That's just my personal opinion. Right now, we're trying to look for a power back like a Nick Chubb, like a Henry, like a Saquon, that can get in between the tackles and run. guys like Dowdle and McLaughlin, they're really good at it if you're for outside running back plays because they can try to get as quick as they can to the edge and run like hell. So that's just me. That's just my personal opinion. Libre, what do you think?
That's a good suggestion. The way that you're they're mentioning there, but I don't feel like it's going to be a good fit for us. Just like how you mentioned, we have McLaughlin. I think that's going to be good enough right now for what we have. He doesn't. I don't think he adds any value to the team.
But keep trying though. And that was it. Okay, I thought there was more. I don't know why.
Wait, they don't have Zeke on there? Like Zeke was a free agent. Like, what is he? Where is he at? Is he on a practice squad somewhere or what?
Zeke is in Cancun right now somewhere.
But he got cut by the Cowboys at the end of the season. So
he was on the last I heard he was on the Chargers practice squad. Now, Don't be surprised if he ends up on either the Eagles practice squad or the Chiefs practice squad, and he ends up getting a ring like Melvin Gordon did last year just by being a practice squad player. So I wouldn't be surprised at that. But Zeke is just kind of like one of those, like, right now, what can he be, like running back 3 at the most, or emergency running back?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that man's stock has fell so hard. And it's just crazy to believe where he was, 9-10 years ago. He was the talk of the town coming out of the draft. But either way you slice it, guys, those names that we read to you, some of them piqued our interest. A couple of them didn't. And there's going to be more names that are going to come out towards free agency. Probably of some running backs that he probably didn't even know were up for new contracts. But whichever running back the Broncos do end up getting after they move on from Williams, because we've already established that that's not an if situation, that's a definite, they need to make sure it's the improvement, especially if they're going to invest money, especially if they're going to invest draft picks, because we got really lucky with getting Bo Nix last year and Troy Franklin and Nick Bonito before that. And just like the last couple of draft picks have been really good. So far, the Javonte Williams pick was the only one that I can think of off the top of my head where it's just like, I thought it was going to be like, a sneaky pick with, diamond in the rough type of thing. But unfortunately, that happens in the NFL all the time. Not every player that gets drafted is going to be a superstar. Some of them just kind of mingle, they hang around, and then some of them just completely disappear and you forget they were even here, type of things. But it's very important that the player that comes in can mesh with the Sean Payton offense system, because let's face it. Oh, and by the way, Libre corrected me on this last week. I said Vince Lombardi instead of Joe Lombardi as our offensive coordinator. So, editor that mistake. I apologize. It's Joe Lombardi who is our offensive coordinator,
not Vic Lombardi, who's not
Vic Lombardi. Yeah. But it's they can mesh with a Sean Payton offense, and that they can build a chemistry with Bo. And, sidebar here, ladies and gentlemen, just to kind of give you an idea of how dedicated Bo is to next year. Bo bowed out of he was nominated for the Pro Bowl. So, he had a chance to go, but he opted out because I think he has to have like a minor procedure done. And then he wants to start working on the offseason for next year. So that to me is a sign of a great future quarterback in this team, because he could have easily went to wherever it is the Pro Bowl is and gotten a bunch of a free vacation with some extra cash probably, but he decided to opt out and go to the drawing board as they say, and get started on next year and fix what could be broken and what can be better for us in 2025.
And just him declining the option of going to the Pro Bowl tells you that he doesn't care about these self awards and so forth, all these little awards that helps him out. And like how you mentioned, once you're a Pro Bowler, you get extra cash going in and getting all of that. But even though it was a scheduled procedure that he's having done, you're already having this. He has this mentality. It's team before self, and that is a great thing to have. We were talking about earlier. We see that in a superstar on the basketball court of Nikola Jokic, who is so selfless and so forth. He can care less about stats, even though he gets a triple double every single night. It seems like when he's on the court, but just because of that fact, he does not care about all of those little accolades and all that. And he's more like, all right, what can we do to help this team? This is what I love about this guy, this young man that we have here as our quarterback and leading the team as our captain. This future is so bright here in Denver for him. It's going to be phenomenal just watching him over the next 12, 15 years to say, leading us to these championships that we hope that he can bring for us.
Agreed, my friend. And before we get to D-Rock's question, not to jump ahead of you, but Mike the Broncos jumping in and saying, another great episode, gents. Well done. Thank you so much for tuning in. And it's high salute to you, my friend. Your support and your generosity of your time is very well appreciated. We really, really do appreciate the comments and the well wishes. And for those of you that are watching, if you haven't followed Mike the Broncos, please go follow them. If that's your name on YouTube, feel free to drop your social and tell them where they can find you. D-Rock jumping in with a question for us. He's saying, what's the free agent target we must sign this offseason? So we just got done talking about running backs, Libre. So I guess we can kind of expand a little bit, because now that the Broncos have more money to spend, as we said earlier, they don't have to necessarily spend all their money on one spot and say, hey, we're done. Kind of like they did last year. They kind of did that. Whatever little money they had left, they kind of did that. That's why they didn't make any big splashes like they did. What was it, the year where they got Ben Powers and
like McGlinchey.
McGlinchey and so forth, where they really revamped. So while we're not there yet, salary cap wise, again, we do have a little bit more money to play with. So we talked about tight ends and wide receivers earlier. So I guess we can dive into that first. So either one of those are definitely going to be a must for Denver, because as much as I love Courtland Sutton, let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, he unfortunately is not a number one wide receiver. It really hurts me to say that. And the only reason I say that is because in that Buffalo game, we've seen, and you guys have heard us say this like almost every episode, and it almost feels like a broken record. We've seen Courtland Sutton catch the football upside down, sideways, with two fingers going out of bounds, like all these incredible catches, which, by the way, are going to make an incredible highlight reel when he hopefully makes it to the Hall of Fame one day. But when you get the ball thrown right at you directly and it goes right over your hands, or you just drop it, and it's like catches that it's like catch 101 type of thing, that hurts, especially for a veteran like Courtland Sutton. You know, I know Vele, he had a drop pass, but I give him, I don't say nothing to him because he's still a rookie. That's still manageable where you can help him fix it. But for a guy like Sutton shouldn't have been dropping no passes at all. So, and in order to be a number one, you have to make passes like that, or you have to catch passes like that, I should say. Like those crazy circus catches, spectacular, that's a whole different thing. If you can make it, fantastic. But when it's something that's like a bullet coming right out of you, out of a slant or a go route or something, and you drop it, that really hurts. So unfortunately, that's gonna make me bump Courtland Sutton down to like number 2, I guess you could say. And if the Broncos are going to try to go out and get a number 1 wide receiver, then they're going to have to get ready to back up the Brinks truck, because wide receivers are like one of the most expensive pieces to try to get in free agency, especially like the really good ones that are, want to get out of a bad team or what have you. Right now, the name going around that's making the rounds in social media is Garrett Wilson from the Jets. And that's really understandable, because he was not happy with Devontae Williams coming to the Jets. There was no reason to bring him in. Garrett Wilson was the big dog, but Aaron Rodgers being Aaron Rodgers and getting his own way, and that just made things a whole lot more uncomfortable for the Jets. So I would love to see Garrett Wilson in the orange and blue. Libre, what do you think?
I agree, but with Garrett Wilson, he's still under contract, so he's not even a free agent. So, and the part of it itself, so we'd have to trade for Wilson, because guaranteed because if you look at all the social media posts and what's been reported, he's already followed Bo Nix. He's followed a whole bunch of these other Bronco players. He wants to come to Denver, I think, so, really bad. And I feel like the way that we're currently set up, I think we can definitely go after him and get him to come over here. Because what else do you want as a player that wants to actually come to your team and wants to be there for you guys? And I love that aspect of it. If we can get him, if we can give him maybe a second, third rounder for him, I think that would be a great deal if we can do that. And then just going to like just the free agency itself. Yes, I feel we still need to get some type of wide receiver, like how you were mentioning. Court is a wide receiver 2. He's not a wide receiver 1 at all. But if we can get possibly even T. Higgins, I know T. Higgins is going to be a hot commodity because he's a free agent this year. If we can get him to come in, even if we can get Garrett Wilson as well, that would be freaking awesome as well to get both of those and have those guys compete. Just bring them in to compete and best players out there. And if Court's not here, Court's not here. Like I love Cortland, but he's just not doing it.
Right. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to check something. Like, I know I've seen that logo somewhere, and that's Mike Carmelini from the Mike the Broncos battles. So I thought that, and it was eating me alive. I'm sorry, I was Googling it while you were talking, and then I just saw on his page, and that's the exact same. At least I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. I'm 40 years old now, so
you need to go get LASIK then.
Yeah, I think so, man.
Yeah. I think it is as well, because he also sent us a message on Twitter as well. He added us on there. He goes with the banger. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just got it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Mike, I am so sorry I didn't recognize you sooner. I follow you like you wouldn't believe, man. And guys, for those of you that don't know, Mike nominated the Orange and Blue Network and the MHRT Network itself top 20 best Broncos podcast. I think MHRT was like 10 or 11. They were top 10, and we cracked at 16. So shout out to Mike. And again, guys, go out and give him a follow. You are not going to regret it. I mean, this man, the support he gives us for all of the podcasters here in Broncos Country is just beyond amazing. So if you're an aspiring, because sidebar here, sometimes I get asked when I'm doing Uber by a passenger when they ask me, like, it's kind of crazy. They're asking me questions about a podcast because I'm like, I'm not successful. I had this conversation with Johnny the other day. My dream when I started this podcast in the beginning 4 years ago, like, I wasn't trying to be the best. I wasn't trying to be number one, because in order to be number one, then you go talk to Mike. He'll tell you, like, you need good audio, you need sound, just go look at all the top dogs. Whatever they're doing, that's what you need. So you have to put in a whole lot of work. And I'm not saying I can't. I just saying I don't have the resources to do that, unfortunately. But my love for the Broncos is what brings me here and what has kept me going all through these years. And if it wasn't for Johnny and this opportunity, I might have been just sitting here talking to a microphone to just like one person doing when I used to do just audio. So the fact that he was able to extend an olive branch and, bring me back, bring the show back, bring you here with me, and give us another show, Viva los Broncos, it's just beyond amazing. So I always tell my passengers, it all starts with a microphone and it all starts with a dream. You put those two together and you just keep grinding. Don't worry about analytics. Don't worry about who's listening. Just go out there and just be yourselves.
And that's the best part about it as well, is like how you're just talking about it, how I am here. We have a common love for the Denver Broncos itself, and that's being recognized right there. People are watching now. He has these mentions. He has this other community, this extended community, that he's getting us that little exposure, just because he's seen what we've been able to do, what you've been able to do over the years as well, because you have this common love for the Broncos. And that's what we're here. We're doing, and we're talking about it. He sees it, he recognizes it, and he's giving us a recognition for that. And again, Baki, thank you as well. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. you know what? And we're going to be here for the future
Yeah.
until the internet is no longer. And I don't know when that's going to happen. So
Yeah, and I also got to shout out Mundungus and Glenn, because if it wasn't for them, like, they were the ones that reached out to me 4 years ago and convinced me to come out and do a podcast about something that all of us had a dream about doing. And we came out, and I got to meet so many great people in Broncos country who I would have never met a day in my life. I met Romy Bean. I met
Romy's awesome.
Yeah, Romy's awesome. I've never met her in person. I'm just saying, like, talk to
Gotcha.
on the show. I've met so many great people. I met former Broncos players. I met Mahai Mario. His stories about all the Broncos players that him and his dad have. When he writes his book, I'll be the first person to buy it. I'm telling you. But I know we're getting off topic here, ladies and gentlemen, but I always get, like, this is always something that's been so close to me that I love talking about. But anyways, thank you guys so much. Whether it's your first time here or whether it's you've been with us since the very beginning, it doesn't matter. We love having you here. Thank you so much for your support. And we also have somebody new here before we continue. Eva, I hope I'm saying that right. Eva Mendez. Hi.
Hola, chica. That's a good friend of mine right there.
Okay. Mahai, salute to you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show. But going back to D-Rock's question. So we got the wide receiver part out. Let's go to tight end. So I threw two names at you earlier. I don't know if either one of them are going to be free agents next year, Njoku or Mark Andrews. But it seems like the Ravens, if you had to trade for one of those, it seems like the Ravens would probably be more willing to trade Mark Andrews, just for the simple fact that, Mark Andrews is still beating up himself over that game 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Njoku just kind of seems to be in a really bad place, especially hearing that the Browns are going to be without Deshaun Watson for probably a whole nother year because he re-injured his injury. So now his recovery is even longer. So now the Browns, if they have any money left, they're going to try to find a quarterback in free agency or in the draft. I have no idea. But if the Broncos are going to go on and try to trade for one, I would love to see Njoku.
I would too.
My number one target. And if you have to settle for like a Mark Andrews, just for the simple fact that maybe he doesn't feel welcome in Baltimore anymore, or Baltimore doesn't want him anymore because they're going to move on with Likely, who had a really good season, then I'd be okay with that. What do you think, Libre?
If we're like, I don't think we should trade for Andrews himself. If anything's going to happen, I think they'll end up cutting him and possibly be part of the free agency itself. But with the tight end position, I think we could just stick with the draft. I think if we can go after Lauren out of Penn State, and he could possibly be there at 20 for us. If we can possibly get him at that, I think he's going to be probably a better fit for the Broncos just because of being younger. First of all, he's younger and he's just coming out into the league itself. Andrews, how much time are you really going to have for him, and what are we going to trade for it? That's something I don't think we can justify for him itself. But Njoku, yeah, he's one of those talents where you definitely could trade for and try to get him in.
I mean, I'm all up for that too, to be honest with you, but I don't see the Ravens. I don't know. I can't see the Ravens cutting a guy like Andrews because even like he's done a lot for that team since he's been there. So I don't, if anything, I would see them like releasing him. I don't know if that's the same thing as cutting him.
Well, that'd be the same way. Yeah, cutting, releasing him.
I think releasing would probably be like the more nicer way of doing it instead of just saying cut, because when you cut somebody from the team, it's like, well, you have no value here type of thing. Whereas when you say you're releasing them, it's like, okay, well, it's not that we don't want you, it's that we don't have a mutual agreement is what they say nowadays. So either way you cut it, like there are a lot of good tight ends out there. And you can go out and get one. I know you said in the draft, everybody's going to want to go out and try to get the next Brock Bowers. But guys like Bowers and your Gronks and your Kittles and stuff like that, they're like they're like once in a blue moon. You really have to be lucky to land a guy like that on your team. And now the Raiders have Pete Carroll as their head coach. So that's going to be an interesting
But with the Raiders, who's their quarterback to throw to him? Like, they don't have any. Yes, he'll get there. He'll get his stats. With Brock Bowers will get him, but he's not going to have a quarterback that's actually going to be there consistently getting him the ball so that they can really succeed and use him properly. Just like Max Crosby. Like, they're at the end of the year. He wasn't happy there with the team.
Well, if I'm being honest with you, the Raiders are trying to replicate the exact same thing that Denver did, almost to the T.
Yeah.
Where the Broncos went out and got a head coach that quote unquote retired and, had his contract bought out by the Saints so he can come and play one more year earlier, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas Pete Carroll was already gone. The Raiders didn't have to trade for anything to acquire his services, and they brought him in. So it's the exact same story, only different colors.
Well, we actually traded for Sean Payton. We actually gave up capital. Yeah,
the Raiders didn't. They don't have to trade nothing.
No.
Because he was already gone. He was already out of Seattle.
He was like some type of advisor or something like that with the Seahawks.
Yeah. And to me, Pete Carroll just doesn't make any sense. I think if he would have went to any other division, I think he would have stood a much better chance. But coming into a division with Andy Reid, who doesn't look like he's going to leave anytime soon, Harbaugh, who's starting to turn that team around, and Sean Payton, who's starting to turn that team around, and now you're asking Pete Carroll to kind of play catch up from like the last 3-4 years and turn it into a championship caliber team, which I don't think is possible because the Raiders gave up their only really good 2 assets left are Bowers and Max Crosby.
Yeah,
that's it. Like the rest of the team is expendable. They got some good players. I'm not saying they don't, but none of them are like, hey, we need this guy here or we're not going to turn this around type of thing.
Correct.
But just kind of going back around full circle, I didn't see this. D-Rock saying trade for Njoku with a 4th and Jarrett Stidham.
That trade would be good, but Stidham is going to be also a free agent. So, you can't use Stidham in that situation unless you go in there and sign him. But Stidham is going to be a free agent once the new league year starts in March.
Yeah, he was only here for 2 years.
Yeah.
And he got paid a whole lot of money for a quote-unquote backup quarterback, which I still am not okay with even when he came on because I'm like, you're paying him how much? You had a whole lot cheaper option in Brett Rippon.
But I think with Sean Payton coming in, because we ended up getting him right after Sean Payton got the head coaching position here and went after. He's like, all right, he was the Raiders QB. Let's just bring him in, insurance policy to hopefully bring in that type of if we have to bring him in for versus the Raiders or whatnot, then we know he can give us some type of potential or some type of information with whatever happening. That teams do that. They never quote unquote say, yeah, we're bringing them in for information. They do it all the time. They just don't put it out there publicly.
You're right. And you would have figured that in last year's game, in a game that meant nothing to both teams, that Stidham would pull out all the stops and get that win and end the season on a high note. And it was a complete opposite.
Yep.
And I'm so tired about talking about that game, but because I was there and I don't know what that spark was that Sean Payton was supposedly trying to find with Stidham when he benched Russell Wilson, which we already all knew what the hell that was all about. So the fact that they were continuing with that story just kind of made the egg on our face just splatter.
Yep.
But if the Broncos want to trade for Njoku, D-Rock, I think that's going to have to be a little bit richer, just for the simple fact that Njoku and Jerry Jeudy, well, depending on who the quarterback for next year is, are going to be key pieces for the Browns to try to make some type of progress over there. So if they're going to move on, I think Njoku is a whole lot more valuable than Jerry Jeudy, to be honest with you.
Yep.
Again, I'll say it again. You guys heard me say last year, everybody was thinking Jerry Jeudy was a world beater in that game against Denver. But when we told everybody that would listen to us that it was just because Levi Wallace was out there and Levi Wallace was he might as well have just been a flag post out there because he would have gotten the same result. Nobody believed us. And then Jerry Jeudy went out the next 2-3 games, and he was nowhere close to where he was in that Monday night game. And then all of a sudden, we all look like a bunch of geniuses. So,
right.
Yeah. So I don't expect, I'm not saying Jerry Jeudy's going to be a bust or he's going to be terrible. He might have a couple of good games, might have another great game like that because I think the Browns are going to play the Broncos again next year.
Yes.
But I can almost guarantee you that Levi Wallace will not be there for that game. But I can't honestly sit here and tell you, D-Rock, what I think would be a respectable trade because I make bad trades in Madden all the time. Sometimes I think I oversell. So, but if you gun to my head, I'd probably say maybe a third, or you can stick with the fourth. I would say probably fourth, and maybe they'd want Zach Wilson. I have no interest in Zach Wilson being in Denver. I honestly don't. I know Sean Payton sees something in him, and maybe with Stidham gone, maybe now you can be a non-competitive number 2 behind Bo Nix. But aside from that, like, I don't know. I'd be okay if both of them left, to be honest with you. But then that means that the Broncos would sign like somebody off free agency again.
But again, you have to remember Zach Wilson is also a free agent.
Oh, is he? I
thought that's part of the trade that we got for him during this last year is that he was in this last part of his contract, his last year of his contract.
I thought he was going into a 2-year deal. That's
no.
I stand corrected. I thought it was a 2-year deal.
No, so we only have Bo Nix as our only quarterback on roster as soon as the new league year hits. So, and that's part of the reason why both Zach Wilson and Stidham was on the keys to like possibly re-signing him of either of those quarterbacks. And we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago about it as well. But either way, like, yeah, he's a free agent.
Yeah, I stand corrected. I'm sorry. I could have sworn I thought Zach Wilson was here for another year under contract, and then he was. I don't know why I thought that was going to happen, but. If management tells Sean Payton like you can re-sign only one of those two guys, so that way they don't have to have this whole quarterback competition thing again next season, I would probably think he'd probably go with Wilson just for the simple fact that he sees something in him, which is the whole reason he traded for him.
No, I agree.
For a compensatory pick, which I'm kind of glad we didn't have to use in terms of Bo getting hurt and having to throw Zach Wilson out there and say, "Hey, go be good." But I think he'd bring back Zach Wilson just for the simple fact that he seems to be like a project that Sean Payton believes in. He can fix, and he's already spent the year with him. He didn't bring in. Well, did he bring in? No, I don't think he brought in Stidham because you said he was already here when he took over. So Stidham wasn't his choice, but Zach Wilson was. So
no, he was. No, Sean Payton did get him during free agency his first year here in Denver, so 2 years ago.
I keep thinking he came with that knucklehead guy before Sean Payton.
Oh no, he was here after. Yeah, this was Sean, quote unquote, a Sean Payton guy still because he did get him from the Raiders 2 years ago when he came through. Yeah.
See, that's how much I don't know about those two quarterbacks. Those are probably the only two Broncos players where it's just like, if I didn't see them sitting next to Bo reading the tablet, I would have probably never remembered that they were still on the freaking team.
Right.
But I mean, going as we get towards the 1 hour mark, ladies and gentlemen, the important thing is that the Broncos have a lot of work to do. This is the time of year where we look to George Payton, our general manager, and say, hey, fix this, or hey, do what you did last year, do it again. Mm-hmm. And I think the acquisitions of certain general managers this year, Libre, have kind of put it on notice just how important the general manager role is. I mean, think of all the teams for the last 2-3 weeks that have gotten general managers and that they've done their homework for them. The Jets, who's the other team? The Jaguars, the
Osos.
The Osos didn't get a new GM. No. Ryan Poles is still there. I wish they would have gotten a new GM. That would have solved so many things. They got Ben Johnson as their new head coach.
That's right.
They took our, which is kind of a head scratching move. They took our tight ends coach and made him their
offensive coordinator. And I still don't even know who he is. Like, that's how irrelevant this guy was to now go from a tight ends coach to an OC. And it's like, yeah, I understand that the NFL, that they all know all the coaching and all that. It's more a little tight-knit community there. But because we didn't have tight ends that really excelled this year, like, you didn't hear anything about this coach or anything. So when I saw that happen, I go, who is this guy? He was a coach on the Broncos? Really? Like, I didn't understand that either. But again, like I said, they're more of a tight-knit community within the league itself. So they know him probably real personal as well. So,
but that's a hell of a gamble though, Libra.
Yeah, I agree.
I told my cousin, not to cut you off, I'm sorry. I told my cousin, who's a huge Bears fan, like, hey, we got one of your guys. And I'm like, oh crap, was it David Shaw? Was it? Then I saw his name. I'm like, dude, I don't even know who that is.
Exactly.
I'm like, bro, like, our tight ends had one good game all year, and that was against Carolina, where what's his name had like 3 touchdowns.
Eric Saubert, or is that?
No, not Saubert, the other one.
Yeah, see?
Yeah,
irrelevant.
Like, if it was the Raiders tight end coach with Bowers, or the Niners tight ends coach with Kittle, or hell, even the Ravens with Likely and Andrews, like, of that significance, that I would understand. But that, to me, that move by the Bears tells me 2 things. One, Ryan Poles as a general manager is still effing terrible. He doesn't know what he's doing. Either him or Ben Johnson. Maybe that's his first mistake as a head coach. Whoever pulled the trigger, I think that's a bad call. And 2 is just basically, again, going back to my point at the beginning of how important being a general manager is. So now that spot is open, Sean Payton has to fill it. So hopefully he picks somebody, he either promotes somebody that, hey, there's a spot opening for you. And, here's the bar. We need you to take it higher than your predecessor or whatever. So they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't announced a replacement for our tight ends coach position. But I know that I think they're still looking for a special teams coach as well after we let ours go, not too long after the season was over. So there's a couple of spots that still need to be filled on this roster. But George Payton is really going to be put to the test again, because depending on what happens with the Super Bowl, and we took the Chargers for granted. I definitely did. I'll eat crow on that. But at least we got one over on the Raiders. So it's kind of like back to the drawing board, where last year we got one over the Chargers, but we got one up by the Raiders and the Chiefs. Well, not the Chiefs. We split with the Chiefs. But it's kind of it's almost like, hey, we need you to do it again. Like, we're almost there. We can taste it. We can almost feel, I don't want to say dynasty run, because that's really shooting for the stars, but like, we're almost there where this offense can return and be a really formidable team, where if you can get a really great running back, they can, give Bo a break when he finally gets the handle of reading coverages and putting the ball where it needs to be, getting a wide receiver that's going to catch the ball and not bobble it, or, put it in danger of being turned over, or a tight end that, even if you're going to use him for checkdowns, that can push or just be like that big body, like an Njoku, just that big bruiser that when he gets the ball, he's going to run and get some yards. I mean, the possibilities for this team out there are really going to be out there, and it's just going to be interesting to see how far up the Broncos extend their arm to try to reach it and bring it down to Broncos country. Libre?
No, I agree with you 100%. It's going to be, if we can get that running back, that's just going to help us out. I think that's really going to be a good piece for us. And I know George Payton does have that in him. I think he's going to be able to bring someone in that's going to help us out, because they know that that's a huge need for us itself. Hopefully we can get there. If they can talk to Audric Estime, hopefully he can be that guy. I just don't know why during that playoff game against Buffalo, why he was a healthy scratch. Like, that's still a questionable thing to me as to why that happened. And we brought up Tyler Batty on coming in and playing that game as opposed to Estime, who's been in there for a while. So hopefully we can get this addressed. If we can get Audric Estime, because I feel like if we could just give him enough time out there and just get in and understand the game in the NFL level and not just the college level itself and get up to speed, he's going to be that wrecking force itself. He can be that one cut and be that bulldozer down the field. But going back to the GM part of it, I feel like George Payton is going to be able to get everything that he can in his control to try to make this a better team than what we had this year. And how you said, it's not that far of a possibility of us being a dynasty team that could be out there as well, and take over the Chiefs, because we look what we were able to do with the dead cap money that we had, the highest dead cap money ever in the NFL history. And look what we were able to do. We made it to the freaking playoffs. So that alone right there, George Payton has already did something good there by being able to get the proper people in the building, and then Sean Payton and the coaching staff being able to coach them to exceeded the expectations of what this team was supposed to do. And now know what our expectation is and the franchise that we have in this winning franchise. This is only going to go higher and higher and higher for us. And this is just the tip of the iceberg for us and just excelling for us. And that's what I'm so excited for this. And Sean Payton and the owners, the Penner Walton Group itself, they are putting everything they can within this team to make us there. And it's just like I mentioned earlier, building the new training facility itself at Dove Valley, getting everything for it's a player-friendly team to come to. And it's going to happen where eventually it's not going to be the Kansas Cities. It's not going to be San Diego. It's not going to be these other teams that people are going to want to go to. They're going to say, let's go to Denver. Look what they're doing there. It's going to be a place where players want to come here.
Agree, my friend. And as you know, we are past the 1 hour mark, which means it is now time for our favorite part of the show, Broncos Talk Overtime. For those of you that have never seen the segment before, this is where Libre and I kind of stretch out and take a little breather, take a step outside of Broncos country for just a little bit and get to see the open world outside of it. So we're going to talk about any and all things, maybe football. Hopefully we can find a way to bring it back to the Broncos. But if not, it's usually just general questions that Libre and I get asked around all the time. And since we're still talking about the NFL, which is something Libre and I were talking about before the start of today's show, we were talking about the AFC and NFC championship games. Let's start with the NFC championship game, Libre, which at first looked like it was going to be good. And then Saquon Barkley just took it and ran with it on the very first play. Now, that's exactly what I was trying to get to when I said the running back game is crucial, because if you can get a guy like Saquon Barkley to come play for your team, or you can get somebody as dumb as the Giants to give you a player like a Saquon Barkley to come and literally carry your team on his back to a Super Bowl. Yeah, Lord Almighty, I'd love to meet that man. But it was just like it was just the Eagles playing with their food all game, which is kind of, I was a little bit shocked because in their previous two games during the regular season, I felt like the Commanders kept it a whole lot closer and kept it a whole lot interesting. And I figured with everything on the line, I thought that they were going to do just that. And in their very first drive, the Commanders were playing tough. They were going for it on fourth down. And then the really confusing, like, oh, we're not going to go for it on fourth down. We're going to settle for the field goal. It's like, well, why? You went for it on fourth like three other times. Yeah. But, I mean, I give credit to the Commanders because those guys went out there and they played their hearts out and they didn't give in. They didn't, bring in the second strings when the game was officially out of reach or whatever. They literally played tough to the last whistle, which is what I always like to see in professional football, because a football game is 4 quarters, not just 3 until you get smacked, unless you're the winning team. And then, you obviously you don't want anybody to get hurt. But if you're on the losing team, then totally different story. But the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, ladies and gentlemen, for their second time in 2 years. So they're looking for some revenge. I also want to give credit to Vic Fangio, because if you look at where the Eagles were a year ago, they got pimp smacked by the Buccaneers in the wildcard round. And the Eagles look like a team that didn't even deserve to make it to the wildcard round. So to go from the wildcard round last year to a Super Bowl caliber team in one season with the help of a really, really one of the best defensive-minded coaches in the NFL speaks volumes. So I give credit to Vic Fangio for doing what he, turning that defense around. And I mean, they gave that man so many weapons, Jalen Carter, Darius Slay, I forget that other young linebacker's name, Bond. I think his name's going to be a pretty popular, I don't know if he's going to be a free agent, but he might be in the up for trade. But that guy's been all over the field. And there's another defense. I mean, either way, that defense has been playing really, really great. And, of course, can't forget about Saquon. Saquon, all he has to do is put the team on his back one more game, and he'll be a Super Bowl champion for the first time in his career.
Well, and there you go. Just how you're saying with Vic Fangio and the defense. What a great defensive coordinator he is. He's such a good defensive coordinator. He knows what is going on. So he's getting people in the correct position so that they can excel at and so forth. And that's what a great coordinator does. We see it right there in Philly. But going back to the Commanders itself, what they've been able to do this year alone, like being one of the top 2 picks in the NFL, the worst teams in the NFL last year, to one of the better ones, where they were in the NFC Championship game with a rookie quarterback. Great job to Jaden Daniels, who is going to be the Rookie of the Year, for the Offensive Rookie of the Year. But you also saw it here, that this in particular game, of how much pressure and all that is out there, is he just folded. He folded in this game. And again, it could be that rookie fatigue, because this is how many games that they've played up to this point as well. You hear that a lot with a lot of these rookies, because they don't play this late into January and so forth. And that's why we have yet to see a rookie quarterback in a Super Bowl. We were trying to hope for it that it was going to be this year, but unfortunately it wasn't. But you just saw that this stage is really huge, and I think it just got into his head a little bit as well, and he made those mental mistakes. But hopefully, he can go out there and play again, because I feel like with him being at that top of a level, and if Bo Nix can continue to rise up and all that, having them in the 2 different conferences, hopefully we can see them in the Super Bowl. Hopefully next year would be a great idea, where you're seeing 2 second-year quarterbacks in the league drafted the same year in the Super Bowl. What a great way for this quarterback class, to be out there. And that could be one of these quarterback classes that can match the 83 quarterback class. And we're talking about Sean Elway, Dan Marino, all those greats as well.
I agree, my friend. And I cannot wait. I'm not the biggest Eagles fan. And for some reason, a lot of people around me, they hate Philadelphia. So I don't know why they're. I know some of them told me it's because of their fans.
It's the fan base.
Yeah, the fan base. I guess. I mean, to be honest with you, you can say the same thing about almost every fan base. Hell, there are people that don't like us that aren't, Raiders, Chiefs, or Chargers fans. So.
Absolutely. I agree with you, but it's like you see it day in and day out. Right after that championship game, there's already video out of these Eagles fans just take your win and let the losing team go about. They were harassing this one fan, getting into their faces and so forth. Come on, dude, you're now in the Super Bowl. Why do you need to do this and ridicule you? That's why the fan base itself is probably the most hated fan base in the whole league, is the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's the part that it's so hard for, especially this Super Bowl, to root for either team, because we don't like the Chiefs just because they're in our division. But then you don't want to root for the and it's really the fan base. It's not the team itself, it's for the fan base. I think that's really where it comes out to.
Hmm. Well, unfortunately, like I can see your point, but I'm unfortunately gonna have to go with the Eagles on this one because
I agree.
as bad as their fan base is, like getting to laugh at the Chiefs losing a Super Bowl for me is something that I can honestly live with, and will probably make the rest of my year a whole lot better.
No, I agree.
um, but transitioning over to the AFC Championship game, Libre, and Buffalo once again falls short at beating Kansas City. Yeah, 0-4, Libre.
I
And it
look at it. I look at it that this 0-4 that Josh Allen has against KC in the playoffs, as to the Buffalo Bills going to 4 straight Super Bowls and losing those
losing
four
all
straight Super
four.
Bowls. That's another like an example is like you have a factor of 4 right now. It's like they say history repeats itself. It happened to do it. They just choked it up. And again, I see there was a lot of calls within this game that should have gone against KC, like especially that fourth down when Chris Jones was the in the
Neutral zone.
neutral zone right there, right as soon as snap, where that's a 5 yards first down, and that could have been the that play itself could have been the game changer, where it could continue the drive for Buffalo and go in and score a touchdown or even a field goal just to win the game for it to be at that point.
I agree. But at the same time, you know, while I don't like the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders, obviously, you guys have heard me say it a million times. I will have to lay some blame at the foot of the Bills because the Bills
Oh yeah,
were the only team that beat Kansas City last year. And I'm not counting the week 18 matchup because even though technically that was a win against Kansas City, it wasn't against their starters. Okay. So, uh, but they were the only team that beat the contending Super Bowl defending champion uh, Chiefs. So knowing that, you would figure that they would have the perfect game plan to replicate exactly what they did in that game and do it again. Josh Allen, he has to know. He has to be able to read blitzes or a whole lot better now. He's not a rookie. He's been
no,
in this game so many times. And even though the coordinator disguised it, he should have known it was coming. You know, and he should have had, if he would have had a check down at least instead of throwing, because throwing off of your back foot is usually never going to end up good. And then Dalton
no.
Kincaid, a guy whose name you hardly ever heard of this offseason, and then I'm pretty sure got an earful from a lot of people. You got to make that catch, man.
Yeah,
You got to make that catch. I mean, that's what you give. You make that catch, you keep your team alive, and so much happens. And then the defense, I mean, it's embarrassing. You got burnt out by Samaje Perine, a guy who,
oh,
who's literally getting carried to a Super Bowl, who couldn't
mm-hmm.
cut it with when he was with us. Last 2 years,
Last, yeah.
and it just like I don't know. I'm really disappointed because the Bills were talking so much smack when they beat us up, and they look like world beaters. And the only thing that we all said to Buffalo is, "Hey, if you make it past Baltimore, there's no way you lose to Kansas City because you already beat them. You already know what's coming. All you got to do is flush Patrick, make him uncomfortable." I don't think I saw Von Miller more than like once or twice the entire game. So I don't know if he was hurt. I don't know if he was on a snap count. I don't know what the deal was, but that man, when he doesn't have to play every snap, but the few snaps he does get, that guy can get to the quarterback still. And
I
I don't know
agree.
why they didn't use him.
And that's like me and my son were talking about that too. We're like, where's Von Miller? Like he had a great game against us. He had a good game against Jacksonville.
Baltimore.
Like where did he go? He just like disappeared. I don't know if it was part of the game plan that they tried doing against KC where they weren't going to use him, but he is the only player that's on that team that has the most games against KC with Andy Reid at the helm. Like, why wouldn't you put him in there? I think he was good to go. I don't think he was injured at all. So I just don't understand why that didn't happen. But yeah, it still baffles me that, like how you were saying, we just maybe saw him one or two times, but that's about it. But no, I agree. Josh Allen, and you have to also put that as well to the wide receivers when you know that a blitz is going to be coming, and if he's coming straight from the corner position itself, and that blitz is coming straight through, that wide receiver needs to know, like, okay, let me stop and get ready for that ball. And that didn't happen at all, and that's really one of the key factors as well that Buffalo had that weren't able to help them their own case to win this game.
Yeah, the fact that the announcers and even people at home knew a blitz was coming
Yeah.
and not Josh Allen is just it's pretty embarrassing. I'm sorry. But to play devil's advocate at the same time, or on the other hand, I don't know whichever one sounds more adequate. That call on Josh Allen that should have been a first down. That was literally the game. Because like you said, you give Buffalo the first down, they have still control of the clock. And the best way to beat the best way to beat Patrick Mahomes is if you can't get to him, you keep his ass on the bench.
Yep.
And that's exactly what Buffalo was doing. And I don't care what you say, that was a first down. Imaginary blue, yellow lines be damned. But because it's in Kansas City, and I will die on the hill that if that game was in Buffalo, Buffalo gets that first down. And then Kansas City Chiefs fans would be crying that wasn't it'd be the opposite effect. But regardless, the Bills gave up what? They went for like 2 different 2-point conversions for somehow, and they both didn't come down to it. So that's 4 points that they just left off the board. So there were mistakes that were made and mistakes that shouldn't have been made because they're supposed to be the guy, especially if Josh Allen does win MVP, then it's going to really feel I don't even think an MVP award is going to be able to lift his spirits because he's going to just feel like he came so short of his main goal and, of all the people that believe in him. And it's like back to the drawing board. But to quote, I forgot who said this when we beat the Bengals or when the Bengals were officially eliminated earlier. It's like that guy in that article said, you're literally wasting the talents of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase with all these, mistakes and blunders. And he's right.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to ruin a really good player is you just waste their youth. You waste their career, so to speak. So it's sad. It sucks. You could really see the heartbreak in his voice. But it's back to the drawing board. I said at the beginning of the season, losing Stephon Diggs would come back to bite the Buffalo Bills one day, even though it was all Josh Allen rushing and, doing all these crazy circus plays or whatever, which is great. But Josh Allen can't do that every single game.
No. And you just saw it right here in the AFC Championship game. You didn't have the true number one receiver out there. You were able to do it with your arm here and there, but you did it mostly with your legs, and it came through. And also, it didn't help the Texans either. So
yeah. And James Cook just kind of completely disappeared from that game. I don't know if they got away from the running game or whatever, but James Cook he ran all over us, and he ran pretty good against Baltimore. Which, by the way, sidebar, James Cook cost me $300 in DraftKings because if he would have ran for 10 more freaking yards, I would have won my parlay.
Dang, I don't 10 yards.
I don't know who that backup running back is. I know it's not your fault because you're only doing what your coach is telling you. But if you could have just told him to let him run one more. Oh, man, I don't know what happened. Libre, you good?
No, I'm good. I don't know what happened.
It just logged you out, man. I was like, we're not leaving yet. We're almost done.
I'm out. Deuces.
But yeah, I came this close to winning my parlay, and I didn't. But it was the very first time I ever did DraftKings, and I won my first bet. So not that one. I won a different parlay, but it was nice to have extra cash in my pocket. But
there you go.
The going back to the point. The Chiefs I think that the Chiefs are going to go into this game and they're going to be on their really, really high horse, even higher than anything Tom Brady has ever ridden into a Super Bowl high horse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and I'm not just saying this because I hate the Chiefs, but I think that they are really going to get punched in the mouth, kind of like they did against Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Like that whole run it back and all that bull jive they were running, into that game, and then they literally got knocked on their ass. And they had Tyreek Hill in that game. So I think that's exactly where they're going. I think Vic Fangio is going to have to come up with a really hell of a scheme to beat Patrick Mahomes, because I don't think he never beat Mahomes when he was here as a head coach. So, and he definitely has the toys up front to do it. I mean, that Kansas City offensive line, don't let anybody fool you, man. They are not as good as people think they are, and they have not run into a guy like Jalen Carter and who's the other the guy next to Carter. I forget his name.
Yeah.
But either way, those boys are hungry. They're coming for you. Darius Slay, he's a really good cornerback. I don't know who's the guy opposite from him, but Bond, if he's out there, he's. I'm telling you, man. I think that the Eagles are going to go in there and they're going to whoop them, because obviously they're going in there with exactly the memories that some of those guys that were still on the team 2 years ago had, where they fell short. And when I tell you that they're going over there grinding, they're grinding, man. And I'd put money to say that they're working harder than Kansas City, because they know what to expect. Whereas Kansas City's going in there thinking that they're going to win it by usual black magic refs, Patrick Mahomes thing. But if Vic, the defense, and Saquon get together and do the exact same thing that brought them to this dance, we might be looking at another Washington Commanders Eagles type
NFC
of score.
Championship. Yeah. Well, this is a revenge game. This is the 2 years ago Super Bowl. There's a lot of Eagles that are still on the team that were there. They want to have this as a revenge game, and they're like, we don't want to have that same feeling that we had 2 years ago. And yes, how you just said it, they are working harder to get this win here, and I think they're going to be that more amped for this game, and they're going to give KC Hill a hard time just in this game alone. And like you say, KC's not going to expect it. They're going to say, oh, we're coming in, we're going to win. But no, it's not. And again, this is the first time the AFC Championship game was the first time this season that KC scored more than 30 points in a single game all season long. So the Eagles can put up points. They can do that real quick. And if you can't keep up with them, and your offense is not that good to continue to put points up as it is so far this year, you waited until the great opportunity of the AFC Championship game to put the most points that you've done all season. The Eagles have done it a lot more than you have all season long, and they can score.
Mm-hmm. Very well said, my friend. But I think we can all agree that, as we said earlier, and we'll probably say it from now until next Sunday, we're all Eagles fans. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Let's go. Wah, wah.
That's going to do it for our show today, folks. We want to give a big shout out to all the people in the chat today. Eva Mendez, D-Rock, Paul Schaefer. I see you jumped in. My high salute to you, my friend. Mike the Broncos, Mike Carmelini. I hope I said your last name right. Thank you so much for your love and support, my friend, and for the shout out on Twitter. Always great. Appreciate to see you here. Broncos fan for life. And I don't know if I said D-Rock already, but D-Rock, thank you so much for your support. Again, guys, please, we ask that you show your support here on the network. Please subscribe, share, comment, and like on this show or on any of your favorite shows you see on the network that tickle your fancy, as they say. Also on MHRT Network, we ask that you go subscribe, share, comment, and like on all of their videos and do the exact same. Your support on the network is very, very much appreciated. If you want to give us a shout out or talk to us on our social at Twitter/X, mine is down there at the bottom of the screen. If you can't see it, it's at a 6'10" Mexican. My co-host is Bronco Libre at Bronco Libre 5280. For any business inquiries, you can email at broncostalk2020@gmail.com. If you're listening to us after the fact, we ask that you hit that subscribe button so you get live notifications every time episodes get posted up live on wherever it is you get your podcast from. And if you screenshot and you send us a picture of it, all very well appreciated, so we can thank you for your support. And as always, when I remember to say it, please continue to support all forms of Broncos media out there, podcasts, articles, however you can, especially right now during the offseason where us creators are going to try really hard to bring you entertaining topics to talk about from now until the start of training camp, I guess you could say. Your support is very, very much appreciated. So for Bronco Libre, I'm Adan Diaz. This has been Broncos Talk here on the Orange and Blue and MHRT networks. Folks, we say goodbye. Have a good night, good day, whenever it is you're listening to us. And as always, go Broncos.
Let's go.
Actually, wait. I forgot to say before you do. Bulls beat the Nuggets 2 days ago.
Hey. We don't talk about that. This is
almost
Broncos
forgot.
talk. This isn't Nuggets talk. This isn't Bulls talk.
But
This is Broncos talk.
I told Johnny. Let's go Bulls. Let's go Bulls. So Jay, Johnny, I love you guys, but go Bulls. Good night, everybody.